Good evening, everybody. Another episode of Gray Matters Radio. Our 20th episode, actually. Big episode. 20.
Wow.
Big 20. Yeah. So Gray Matters Radio. Welcome, everybody. So what is Gray Matters? Well, Gray Matters is a show that operates somewhere in the world of the in-between. Pretty much like any good therapy session should basically be. Somewhere in the middle, somewhere that's a little bit gray. And why Gray Matters Radio? Why this show even exists? Well, in case you haven't realized it, our country is kind of like a really bad marriage right now. Everyone seems to really hate each other. No one wants to get along. And who better than America's counselor, Michael Devine, to help keep us in the gray, to bring us together? I know it's selfless. It's extremely selfless of a job, but somebody has to do it. I have a conscience, Bill. I am a counselor with a conscience. I saw all these people just in my office talking about how bad things were, watching the news. I just couldn't sit back anymore. So I figured time to bring my type of therapy to the country, because this is America's Therapy Hour, the way I look at it. It's America's therapy, right? But who better than my best friend Bill, co-host, the armchair QB, really the armchair therapist.
Well, the first couple guys you offered this gig to, they were busy, so
they were busy.
I was home.
They were busy, but you did decide to come, and I am thrilled kind of with that. So
you built it, so I came.
That is very true. And and I know last week we were talking about new music and everything, and having a new home. We actually are officially on our new home on the Reporters Network.
That's very, very exciting.
It is really cool. I love it. It's actually cool. Get to have our own control of our own destiny and everything. We could really go on the show as much as we freaking want. I love it. So it's really, really cool. And so, now I know we've been talking a lot about the shutdown and all this crap. I want to kind of bring it back to why this whole show exists, talking about the real things that are affecting this country. And as I said, I am America's counselor.
This is therapy not only for the listeners, but for you and I, and it really is.
It is, and I look at, just like a couple that comes in, or a family, they have disagreements, and I have to help find that common ground. I don't have a dog in the hunt. As a therapist, I don't have a dog in the hunt, but as a clinician, as a radio show host, really the country is my client. I care about what's best for the client. So it's about finding compromise. And so healthcare, to me, that's going to be, let's be honest. After all this crap gets over with on a shutdown, we're going to start talking about healthcare again.
Right back to healthcare.
And healthcare's, a little bit kind of screwed up. In case you haven't realized, unless you're like a very wealthy CEO, and you have like these amazing plans, you don't got to pay for anything. Let's be honest. Everyone's healthcare either sucks, or maybe sucks a little bit less than somebody else. Or you don't have any, or you have government health insurance. We gotta get to talking about it, right? But the thing is, we were actually talking about this on the Voice of the Radical Center today, and one of the things I was making a comment about is that everyone is getting stuck in this argument about, should the government pay for it? Should the government not pay for it? I'm just like, we gotta take a step back for a second. We keep talking about healthcare, like, should the government not? But there's actually, we got to, even before the government even thinks about paying for it. Howard Schultz was talking about it earlier, where it's unaffordable.
Well, I'll tell you what, it's unaffordable, unfortunately, number one. But number two, my whole position is, let's assume that the government does get things in order. They get their financial house in order, and we're not in this huge debt, and they actually can, come up with the funds to supply decent health care for the Americans, which I think they should be able to. The problem is, it's still run by the government. Those bunch of inept boobs, do you really want them?
Well,
as your it shouldn't be that way, but unfortunately, that's what it is. It's like a three-ring circus saying, hey, we know what's best for you.
But I think we got to get beyond that. I think we don't even need to be talking about the government paying for or an HMO, because that's where I think we all get lost. The thing is, we got to start talking about why healthcare is so messed up to begin with, and what do we have to fix even before the government would or wouldn't kind of pay for it. Now, this is a very big kind of topic, and so we have my father, Richard Devine. He's the professor. I know he talks all things military and history and politics, but I mean his area of expertise is healthcare. Richard, for those of you who don't know the professor, 20 some odd year experience in the healthcare industry, was a chief resource officer and VP of supply chain for a hospital system. Worked in consulting doing supply chain, basically helping companies or helping healthcare companies, hospitals negotiate better deals. I mean, if anyone knows what the cost of everything is, Richard is the guy. So I figured there's going to be a 3-part series. And so I figured for tonight's episode, this was a great place to kind of start. Dad, you there with us?
Yep, I'm here.
All right. Now, so, I want to kind of tee this up a little bit. So we've been seeing lots of things in the news recently with healthcare, with doctors, and there's one here particularly here in Columbus, Ohio, in the Mount Carmel Health System, where we had a doctor basically. They don't really know why. I mean, if you read the news, you can kind of see some of the headlines about overdoses with fentanyl. Now, we're not going to get into the whole police detective insider kind of thing, but
well, the investigation is still ongoing.
It's still
we don't want
ongoing.
to speculate.
We don't want to speculate
Sure.
anything, right? But to me, though, one of the things that's been jumping out, and I thought this was actually one of the best places to start off with, if we're going to really address healthcare and understand it, we got to start here. And a lot of people have been bringing up the question of why is it doctors are getting away with what it is that they are getting away with? Why isn't nobody saying anything? And I think this case, I mean, literally there's hundreds of cases across the country over the last so many years where you hear these stories. We had one in Dallas where we had a neurosurgeon that was high on coke and alcoholic operating on people, and even multiple of the staff were like sitting there multiple times. Why didn't anyone say anything?
It's almost like the airline pilot that gets drunk because you act as if, well, the guy knows what he's doing. He's landed the last 18 planes in a row like this. Why? I guess I don't know.
Well, and that's where it does kind of get
people are scared to speak up, and
well, we have something. It is called obedience to authority,
yeah.
And it's a social psychology term. We've seen it. The FAA in particularly has done lots of research where there's been accidents, and you see on the black box recorders where the captain was doing something wrong, and the first officer would almost catch it, but then when they would go back, when they would survive and ask, "Why didn't you say anything?" Well, it's like, well, he's the captain, right?
Well, you're right. It's hard to. Well, let me ask you. Let me give you a scenario, just kind of off subject. If you were a passenger and they were like, okay, you got one of two choices. We got to land this plane. We can either have you land with the 20-year veteran who's had a few cocktails, but he does this all the time, or we have with the rookie, this is his first day on the job, and he wants to land the plane. And it's bad weather and everything. Well, I'm probably going to go with the veteran that's had a couple of white Russians.
You are probably correct. but that's the whole mindset. I mean, literally, the FAA, and they've actually come up with procedures. So we have these things where it's like, okay, we see it happening a lot in hospitals where doctors seem to be able to get away with a lot. Yeah. And I think we see it with practice, but then we also, I think, see it even on the financial side where that is a big deal with our healthcare because as Richard, I'm sure, is about to talk about, he's talked about in previous episodes, the cost of healthcare is the majority of the problem. And so now, Dad, I know it's a big, long intro and opening and everything, and so now the thing is, like, I think you are very uniquely positioned to talk about this because you literally were the go-between in between the hospitals and the doctors and the manufacturers. I mean, the doctors, if I'm correct, were the ones that were coming to you going, "Hey, we need this, we need this, we need this." The hospitals are like, "Well, we only want to pay this." Manufacturers are like, "Well, this is what we're going to charge you." So help me and all of our listeners maybe kind of understand a little bit just the dynamics of doctors in the hospitals and just that doctor privilege, that power they have. Like, what is your experience like with that?
Well, I think you have to understand is one, to a hospital is a service provider. Okay, it has to go now. It's so competitive healthcare. Is that one? Hospitals went out instead of where doctors were getting fed up with running their own practices, paying their own insurances. The hospitals were getting to the point where, we need patients. Unfortunately, a hospital is there to provide a service to treat sick people. In order to get to sick people, you have to have a referral. A referral is the physicians. So the doctors were finding themselves in excellent position where if you have multi-systems in a city, well, everybody was trying to get those doctors to send their patients to their hospitals. And then you add in the point where, well, what about my managed care contracts? Are those managed care contracts for those patients? Are they going to allow them to come to my hospital, or aren't they? So this whole point to where the doctor becomes the key individual. And so then what started to happen is the hospitals started getting to the point, well, I'm going to buy the doctors. I'm going to start buying. I'll buy the practices. I'll buy the doctors. Then basically I'm going to pay them a fee. I'll pay them bonuses. And then they're going to send their patients to me for those patients that can go to that hospital.
Now, and I want you to verify.
Now all of a sudden,
well, hey, Pops, one sec, because I want you to verify, because one of the things that when I talk to a few people about this particular thing, it was almost like sports. They go, well, if we don't pay them this or give them this, they're going to leave. They're going to go and take all those patients. They're going to take all the
like a free agent.
Is that literal? Is that
Yep.
Is that basically what you're saying? Is kind of like
yeah. Well, that's what I was trying to get at. So then that's the key. Is basically when they were private doctors, you had to, physician lounges, table in the physicians' lounges, have their own lunch counters in the physician lounges for the surgeons. I mean, they started giving amenities because of the fact it's like a hotel. The doctors had the choice to go to anywhere. Well, who was going to cater to me the most? And if I'm a doctor that has a very good practice and I'm sending a lot of patients, well, guess what? Who then is the customer? Well, it's not only the patient, it's the doctor.
Wow.
So the hospitals found themselves sitting there going, well, not only do I got to cater and make the experience for a sick person to come to my hospital, that I've got to give them the highest level of care, I also have to go out there and make sure I'm catering to those physicians because somebody else is trying to do it. So I want to keep that because I'm only going to get the money if the patients are accessing my system. So in those cases to where you have docs that are high referral docs, the hospital is going to bend over backwards to those docs.
And then now the doctors, do they hold it over their head? I mean, do they literally know the power they have and be like, what are you going to do about it?
Oh, no. Yeah. Yes, they do know it. They know it and they use it. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I went up against docs. And the first thing they said to me was, well, I guess if we were trying to get them to move to a different product or whatever, and they didn't like it because, remember, I always said follow the money and you'll know exactly what's going on.
Yeah.
Is that they would go to the CEO, the COO, and they'd sit there and say, look, if I can't use my product, I'm going to start taking my patients to XYZ hospital. Well, the next thing you know, I get a phone call. What are you trying to do? Why are you pissing this guy off? I want you to stop. Okay. Wow.
It seems like the mafia.
Trying to get them to move because that is one some of our savings is going to be compliant with this. I don't care. You can't piss this guy off because they give us $5 million a year. He's one of our big referrals. He's a big doc. He's a big name. Oh, okay. Groups. So now,
medical world.
You just created. I actually had one time to where we were trying to get a doc to make a change to an implant system. And we were just trying to we had about 9 different practices. and a couple of them were owned by the hospital, which we had no problems with. They would use, and then we had one that was a privately owned, and I met with that partner, and we sat and we talked very honestly. And halfway through the conversation, I was trying to get him to say, I know you like this one, but could you, out of maybe every 5 procedures, could you use at least this competitive system? He goes, yeah, you know what? It's good. It's not that bad. I used the other one. I won't go into detail. And then when he was done, he goes to me, where did you get your medical degree? And I said, well, no, I don't have a medical degree. I have an MBA. So you didn't go to medical school, did you? I go,
Dick.
no. So you're practicing medicine without a license. I go, no, I'm not practicing. No, And he goes, well, you're prescribing. You're prescribing for my patients. A month later, he said he would think about it. A month later, the corporate attorney came into my office and he said, I'm going to need you for a deposition.
What?
He goes, there was a complaint filed with the state attorney general that I was practicing medicine without a license.
Stop it. Are you serious?
And all you did was suggest something.
I am telling you. I'm telling you that's what you're up against when you're going up against this, and that, when sometimes if you go up and you go and confront some of them, and they turn on you and go to the CEO or whatever, and all of a sudden you get the old weenie whacking, in which you're threatened with your job. You will not do this ever again. Why were you, you sit there and you go, well, screw you, I'm not doing it anymore. Hell with it. So the key is follow the money, and you're going to follow what happens. And the docs have the money.
And so the hospitals, it almost seems like in sports where they're so good, they let them get away with a lot more than what they basically should. And I guess like when it's just one thing, it's another thing, it's another thing. It's like a frog in boiling water. And would you say that is almost the exact dynamic that you see then of why doctors are able to get away with like borderline malpractice, borderline reckless, negligent behavior because they bring in so much money?
I'll be very honest with you. I've always looked at it that way, to say, looking at it in pure economic terms, in cases to where there is a very large doc or whatever, sometimes, depending on what he brings in that revenue, or what's that patient referral, or what could be the impact, it's all taken in, and all of a sudden, the hospitals, I'm sorry, they may turn a blind eye.
Well, it's like remember in a Fight Club.
Something happens.
I remember in Fight Club when he worked for the insurance company and he talked about, are we going to do a recall?
Oh,
and they basically try to calculate, well,
the
what is
lawsuit,
the average lawsuit, and what's it going to cost?
What it costs.
And it's basically what they're doing. And so it.
Remember GM did something like that a couple years ago.
Oh, with the accelerators, right?
Oh, everybody does.
Yeah, that was crazy.
You always, well, hell, Ford did it with the Pinto. When they knew they designed the gas tank in the wrong way, they went in and did a calculation rather than stop production, retool, redesign. Well, what's the impact? What's going to be the probability? Yeah.
Well, and this is where it gets really problematic.
There's reality to everything.
Well, and this is where this is where I think, all right, so we're looking at, if we're peeling the onion back of like, why does all this matter for us to have this discussion if we're going to really fix healthcare, is because, all right, so we have an inherent problem right here so you have private hospitals, right? They're there to make money. That's what they're there to do. Or even like a hospital that's public that's just about to break even. They're thinking about their dollars and cents. And so for profit, not for profit, they're put in these positions where you have shareholders, stakeholders, investors, budgets. You have to maintain that. And on top of that, it's like it is kind of what does push the innovations. The reason why we do have some of the greatest doctors. The reason why we have these innovations is because of how lucrative it is, because of the money. And so, I mean, is there a middle ground? I mean, or is it just you have? I mean, is it as black and white where you have to choose between human nature of greed and you want to make money and it does kind of have a benefit of innovation? Is there a balance point, or
the problem in healthcare is it's not like driving a car off an assembly line. Okay, I mean it's
people's lives.
It's an object. That's all basically it is. The problem that you have is the people that go through the service that is provided is rendered to a living human being, and the mistakes that can be made can be very disastrous. A loss of a life. So there was one time I can't remember the exact how it was all done to me. They, we were going through something, and another doctor said to me, he goes, "What do you call a doctor that graduated the last in his class, the end of his internship or whatever?" And I'm going, I just looked at him. I'm going, "There's a trick to this," but he goes, "Doctor."
Doctor, that's right.
He goes, "A doctor." He goes, "Nobody's asking." He goes, when you applied for your job there and you did it, did they ask you how where you graduated, what your GPA was and all that? What? Yeah. I go, and the whole thing, I had to give him what was in my graduate. And he goes, "Well, when you go into a doctor, do you ever ask him what his GPAs were? Do you ever ask him what his graduating got?" He goes, "No, you see the damn thing up on the wall." So he said, then all of a sudden, everybody has this faith in the guy, but you've never asked him how competent is he.
Well, I think part of that's because people assume they're all smart.
That's true. I mean, doctor, it's that authority.
Even if you're
I'm automatically assuming.
Well, but I got to be honest with you. When I meet a doctor, a medical doctor, I got to tell you, I'm going to assume, and probably right, that they are, substantially smarter than I am because they are medical doctors. They go through a heck of a lot of schooling and they learn a lot more stuff than the average bear. So even if they're at the bottom of their class, guess what? It's still a pretty prestigious class, so to speak.
Well, and I think they get away with that. I mean, if anything,
but it's in their field. Okay, you could be an engineer, but not a doctor.
Yeah,
and an engineer could be a very high in this thing. But in the doctor part, okay, what if he wasn't sure on chemistry? Doses of medications are based on weight, other things. Well, what if you said, "Well, I didn't do my right calculations." I mean, there's a level of competencies that go in there. I mean, across the United States, every hospital is going after mistakes that are being made. There is so much money that is spent by the hospitals to try to prevent medication errors, wrong medications going to the wrong patients, wrong dosages, you name it, or coming out of surgeries, covering up where some surgeries went wrong, in which other doctors have to go back in and redo it because they didn't do it right.
But this is where I feel like it's every solution, because I know we have, colleagues, we have friends, we have family in this industry, and they have different names for it. It could be stop the line. It could be, calling safe harbor. Where basically whatever is going on, if a nurse or another staff member sees something going on, you can stop it. There's Pyxis systems, which make it to where a doctor's order can't be overridden and certain medications can't be distributed. But here's the problem, though, is that we're coming up with all these downstream solutions. It's kind of like, how do you cure cancer, but I still want to smoke cigarettes? It's like, well, we're not, and I think what we're not addressing is the underlying issue of greed within the greed and money that is within healthcare system, because you can try to create these things where, a nurse is going to go, "I don't like what you're doing, that's wrong." But when you talk to any nurse, even though they have those systems, and as you're saying, every one of them have a fear of, am I going to get retribution? If this is a big doctor that it brings in millions of dollars, not one nurse is going to sit there and go, I feel comfortable doing this. I'm afraid I'm going to lose my job. And let's be honest, they can't.
Well,
Are they going to choose to get rid of the doctor bringing in $5 million a year, or the nurse that is $40 an hour and I can bring in somebody else?
That's true.
And that's a systemic issue.
I mean,
Yeah.
I was even gun shy after a while.
And you were an executive.
When I was doing that, and all of a sudden I have a deposition
Right.
to what took place, and I'm going, well, wait a minute, guys. If this is the case, then every time I go and we try to have a product or change a product, I put my name on it. I'm practicing medicine.
I mean, that's got to be a scary
and
thing.
it's very powerful.
I had something in
know.
my job, like, oh gosh, this has probably been 8 years ago, where I was contacted one day and they were talking about how I possibly had to be deposed for something that happened before I was even in that position. And I said, well, wait a minute. This was by the guy before me. I just happened to be the person to get in the role now. But luckily it didn't, but I was scared to death. I'm like, wait a minute here. I wasn't even with the company when this happened. But it was like, well, they just want to know what you know. And I'm like, because basically what happened, someone got the wrong material, and I've been making these parts for 2 or 3 years, and then they found out something had failed, and everybody wanted to point the finger at somebody.
Old Bill over here.
Well, no, there wasn't so much that, but they just, they wanted. It was part of the ongoing thing to be. Luckily, I didn't have to be deposed because I think they realized, hey, this guy had nothing to do with it. But since I was one of the contacts, I was like, I was freaking out. Like, wait a minute, I wasn't even here in 2005. Like, wait a minute.
And that's and the thing is, on top of that, I remember being in practice so often. I had psychiatrists, and I don't know how many times we heard about these horror stories. I'm talking like doctors abusing drugs. Literally having clients come in and write scripts for them, sleeping with clients, going into business with clients. I mean, hell, Dr. Phil. Dr. Phil, Oprah Dr. Phil. Literally, you know why he stopped practicing and he lost his license? He had to surrender. He went into business with his clients. Now here's the deal, though. All right, when I was talking with one of the partners of mine, and when I asked him, I was like, "Well, aren't they worried about losing a license?" Because he laughed. He goes, "Man, they ain't gonna lose their license." He goes, "Man, you'd have to be like a freaking serial killer, like literally, purposely, like literally on video saying I'm gonna kill this person, and to lose your license permanently." He goes, "It's like a club." He goes, "They don't want to remove your license."
Look at Dr. Kevorkian. He was killing people straight up, offing people, and they still on TV. What do they call him? Dr. Kevorkian.
It's like, so like the whole idea of losing your license isn't even a scary thing to these guys, because they realize, like, I'm just going to get a slap on the wrist. My insurance rates might go up, but frankly, I'm still going to go get a job, because if I'm good at what I do, I'm going to, So we have a systemic issue of money. And this is where I feel like we're like a drug addict like whenever I have these parents of these drug addict kids, and it's like, well, if I kick them out of the house, they're going to be homeless. And if they're already using drugs, they're probably going to die. I'm like, listen, they're going to fucking die if they're on your couch 100%. You're just going to be complicit, is it? Because you're making it easier.
Do you want me to die in your house, or do you want me to die on the street?
And I go, listen, 100% they're dying in your house. But if you kick them out, maybe just from tough love, maybe figuring it out, maybe they'll figure it out. Maybe it's 5%.
Yeah.
But 5% survival is exponentially greater than 0. And this is where I feel like we're at as a country with our healthcare, freaking anything. I mean, we'll go over presidential stuff a whole other week of episodes. But with this one, it's, well, if we start reeling in the cost, if we start putting controls on the docs, we start putting cost controls on what they can charge on the pharmaceutical companies. Oh, the doctors aren't going to be as good; they're going to go elsewhere.
Right.
Oh,
my fear.
There's not going to be as much.
Fears.
There's not going to be as much innovation. But here's a problem.
Yeah.
It's the same damn thing. You're right. It might happen, but I know sure as shit what's happening is that doctors feel as though they can get away with whatever they want. Profits are above everything of all the fields. This is about human lives. We're not talking about a car you're trying to maximize a profit. We're talking about basic human rights and dignities, and they are making billions, and it's so damn unaffordable. We now have tiered healthcare in this country to where we have decisions being made for us anyway. I mean, literally, I can say probably 70% of the time, Last time I've had myself, my wife had our prescriptions filled. We've had the pharmacy go, well, I'm sorry, that's not a preferred medication. We want you to choose something else. And we had one where literally our daughter has it's reactive airway, and there's this medication that they didn't want to cover because it wasn't. But the thing is, the other one didn't work, and we had to go through I don't know how many appeals for it. And meanwhile, my poor daughter, for a couple months, every 2 weeks, she was having like these asthma-like attacks.
Meanwhile, you just want the medication.
Exactly.
You're
So
like,
our insurance
cut out
companies,
through all the bullshit.
yeah.
Just,
So our insurance companies are making business decisions, not what's best in our interest, what's in their best bottom line. So we have all these people, doctors and hospitals, making decisions about whether or not a doctor should be able to do something. And they'll turn a blind eye because they bring in so much money. We have nurses and clinicians and people working with the hospitals that are so damn scared to say something they won't because they're going to lose their job. We have our insurance companies trying to make a profit and making decisions for us. So at some point in time, we got to take a look at ourselves and go, this is going to go to a bad place anyway, and people, if not are dying, are not already dying because of medications they're rationing or not getting. So, and I don't know where that middle ground is, but there has to be some middle ground. And I don't think it needs to be like a, fuck them, let's tax them 80%, but it's like, no. There has to be something to where you can make a badass profit, because this is what this country is about. I believe in that.
Absolutely.
But there has to be a line where it's like, how much is enough on something that's people's lives?
It's interesting that you said it, because it goes back to what we were kind of touched on earlier, was, with government health care. And everything you just mentioned, which are all very good, excellent, valid points about basically the red tape and the money and just everything getting clogged up, so to speak. Like, I worry about that if it went to a government healthcare system, which in theory would be great. But I feel like that would exponentially be just so much greater, because now you have government involved. And you want to talk about people that will add, in my opinion, red tape. And you have people that will have more people give input about their idea. Like, it's like the DMV on steroids. Like, I feel like everything that you just mentioned about preferred medication and this, that, and the other, unfortunately, our government, the way it is, I mean, it's big government. I feel like they would just muck it up. Even if that's saying something, I feel like they would just do worse.
But you have government. You have government already in the healthcare system.
Yeah, that's what Medicare.
They run almost pay 70%.
Wow.
Also, whatever the government says is going to be usually a pay rate, your HMOs, your private companies follow what the government is really actually doing. Now, when it comes to drugs, and I'm the worst person because of working with the VA and Medicare and everything else, is, the formularies that they approve are quite extensive. But here's the problem, is they start looking at results, or does the drug that is approved right now, does it get results? Yes. Okay. Is the new drug, and you got to remember, in the United States, and here's the problem, you got to get after the drug companies to control the drugs. And that was what Trump promised, that he was going to go after the biopharm companies. He was going to reduce the cost. But here comes, if you watch TV, these companies have got smart. Instead of trying to go through the HMOs to get the stuff, okay, they're now taking these boutique drugs and bringing them on TV. And the problem that you have is they want to charge maybe 10 times the price for this drug, and it doesn't do anything more appreciable than what is already being done, that is maybe in generic or whatever. And the government and whatever, your doctor, they're managing these drugs to determine, does this drug bring anything appreciable to the market that these drugs do not? And if they're not, we're not paying, 500% over what we're doing right now.
Well, here's a number.
You have to have somewhere.
Well, Dad, I just looked this up. Look at this.
Are the people that are doing the evaluation.
Well, Dad, I just looked this up. Mm-hmm. Pharmaceutical companies last year spent $2.7 billion on TV advertising last year.
Yeah.
Think about that.
That's
2.7
what
billion,
I'm
the
saying.
top 10 pharma companies. Yeah. Yeah.
That's crazy. Well,
That's
again,
crazy.
if they're spending that much
Well,
on advertising,
and
think how much they're making off that then.
they're also, we had a term what we called the drug salesman to the docs. They weren't usually guys; they were very beautiful women.
Oh,
They
I'm
were
sorry.
selling drugs to docs to get the drug.
Hold on.
The docs.
Hold on. I gotta do a correction. I was wrong on that number. That was 2012. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. 2017, the number was $6.1 billion.
So it tripled.
My bad.
Yeah.
My bad. I wanted to make sure I got that number right. But that you're right. That says so much. And now here's another question I have for you, Dex. I think as we're going down this path, I think there's another important angle for us to look at this. Is that what difference did you start seeing when doctors started getting into the medical supply business themselves, device manufacturing, clinical trials? What did you start noticing from your tenure as a consultant, as a chief resource officer? What did you notice? Like, what changed with how doctors made decisions when they had a vested interest in the medication or they had a vested interest in the devices that were being used?
Well, it's basically all of a sudden when a doctor demands, you get a call from the OR, the cath labs, or whatever, saying Dr. X is raising a fit, and he's just brought the salesman in, and he's going to use this new product. Well, first of all, nobody knows what the device is. We haven't checked to find out if it has a 510 approval. Is it safe to be used for the purpose that he's going to be using it for, or is it off label? I mean, but he's demanding. Why? All of a sudden, you start to realize, well, he's now a spokesman, or he's going to conduct trials using that device.
And they get money, percentage, which is totally legal, mind you.
Convenient.
100% legal. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, think about that for a second.
Maybe a little bonus here.
Yeah, so they're making money on both ends.
Sure.
And now
I don't mind that they make money as long as they're doing the quote-unquote right thing.
So, but this is where the problem is, all right? We want to know, why is the cost of healthcare so bad, and why is nobody having that discussion? But think about it.
Because people need it. They can charge what they want.
Well, here's the problem, is that there's not anybody in the Congress, Senate, President, that is sitting there going, so, all right, so we want everyone to make money, but you guys are making billions, right? I mean, literally, stuff is so unaffordable. Our healthcare costs are going up 15, 20% every year. You guys keep raising the prices, and yet we have all these doctors making exorbitant amount of money. They're making their decisions a lot of times based upon what's best for their pocketbook. I mean, charging whatever it is that they want, and not one person, a hospital, because the hospitals are making money on it, right? They're bringing in the people.
Yeah.
The congressmen and senators aren't saying anything because they're getting lots of lobbying dollars to go, because they're getting scared, right? Oh, if you do this, Senator Johnson, you're going to be responsible for no innovation. We're going to go Riyadh. We're going to go to New Delhi, and we're gonna make it there. They're scared shitless, and plus they get all the money in there.
It's the money they're scared. They're not worried about. I mean, they are worried about that, but it's be honest. It's money.
It's money, right? And so
they're going
to pull the money, and we're going to give it to your opponent if they go and run against you, right? And so that's why nobody is saying anything about it. I mean, there's not one person in the entire healthcare industry that's saying this is not right. Because
nobody can speak up. The people that they're supposed to speak up for us, our lawmakers, are basically bought and paid for.
Exactly.
And I get it. I understand how it works. And it's legal, but that's the problem.
Just think about the opioids.
Yeah.
These drug manufacturers went to these doctors. They told them, "Here's these drugs. Treat with pain. Do all these dosages." Now, if you follow this, even though you're going to make zombies and addicts, don't worry about it. Just keep prescribing.
Well, Purdue lied.
The more that you prescribe, we're going to pay you a bonus.
Well, think about it. Purdue lied to Congress. They go, it is not going to be the way we made. It's not going to be addictive. If anything, we designed it to be less addictive. When they very well knew it was a lie. They knew,
like the tobacco companies.
Yeah, and the thing is, and they were even making comments about how much money, like literally, in the in the height of the opioid epidemic, they literally were talking about their profits and how they can make more. And then here's a fucked up thing. This one just came out. So Purdue Pharma is the family that owned the pharmaceutical company that makes OxyContin. So the whole family is under lawsuit. Now they tried hiding and redacting the lawsuit, but the judge struck it down and go, no, here's it out for everyone to read. So now the 700 and some page lawsuit, they're going through all of it. Now here's a screwed up thing. At the height of the opioid epidemic, you know what they had internal discussions about? How are we going to push now our opioid treatment medications to treat this? I mean, let that sink in for a second. And guess what? You know the only reason why that got out? We're not. This isn't a federal lawsuit right now. I mean, technically, I think is it now that is that Purdue, is it civil or is that criminal?
You know, I was reading about that, and I'm not sure if it's civil or criminal.
I can't remember.
I think it's probably civil, but don't quote me on that.
It's not criminal. I know that.
And so it's civil, right?
Criminal.
So now think about it.
Yeah, I think it's more of a civil.
So now, think about this though. If it wasn't for the judge releasing us, we wouldn't know any of this. And help me understand. They lied to Congress, right? Literally, if we look at this Russia investigation, we have people being put in jail left and right for lying to Congress. Now here, we have a pharmaceutical company that directly lied to get FDA approval. Never mind the fact that the FDA, everyone that once they leave there, they go and work for the pharmaceutical company. So we're not going to get there. Not to mention they had whistleblowers on 60 Minutes that said that. Straight up lied. And then on top of that, not only they lie about the addictive properties of it, made record-breaking profits, right, that are costing hundreds of billions of dollars a year to our own government, you know. And then at the height of it, after lying, then they go, how can we make more money on our opioid treatment medication?
We're going to solve the problem.
How in the hell are all of these people not... we want to know, why is our healthcare so expensive? It's this. We don't have anybody out there going, enough is enough. And then really the sociopathic nature of people making money this way. I mean, I don't understand how people are living, with themselves. Like the company that is increasing the price of insulin, the company that's increasing the price of epinephrine, solely for profit at people's expense. We've had stories of people taking a 1 day dose and stretching it out over 3 days because that's all they can afford.
Yeah.
I mean, we have companies. There's actually a anti-anxiety drug. It's called Boost Bar, and it's an anti-anxiety drug that doesn't work. It's very unique. They're the only ones that have a patent. There's no generic. Well, there technically is a generic, but the thing is, because they weren't making a profit anymore, and the thing is, though, millions of people are using this thing. They go, we're not making a profit anymore. We don't like the profit. We're just going to stop making it without giving anyone warning. So now we have millions of people that have had to get off their medication cold turkey, no weaning, no nothing. And that because it's a unique class of medication, it's not like you can go to something else. No responsibility. Just, we're not making a profit. No, thought of, oh, wow, people are going to have to wean off of this. Maybe we should have given them a warning. We had people getting mail order renewals for their prescriptions, and they got the renewal envelope with nothing in it. And the thing is, they don't have to tell the FDA. They don't. And the thing is, they don't even have to tell the FDA when they're going to get it back. It just says to be determined.
Wow.
That's is the era that we're in. It's like
the drug companies are the biggest pushers.
Yeah.
They get everybody hooked on that drug. Now all of a sudden, they just raise the price.
Yeah. And nobody's saying no.
I mean, it's legal. It's legal drug pushing.
And think about it. And
when
no
they go
rules
before Congress.
Yeah.
They got so many allies when they go before Congress. Is basically the guys there are actually being paid.
Yeah.
Some unbelievable.
Yeah. There was a giant
money.
whistleblower case of all these FDA guys that were actual plants. That then they would defend the pharmaceutical companies or mysteriously not investigate something or approve something, and then a year later, then they would quit and then go work for them.
Well, you stand in front of, there's a congressional hearing or Senate investigation, what have you, and these big pharma folks are basically, like you said, Dick, they're standing in front of their employees in a way.
Yeah.
I mean, they're paying all these people, all these elected officials money. They're giving them donations and what have you. And now they're going to stand in front, and you think they're going to ask the hard question?
No, heck no.
Some might, but overall, let's be honest here. You're not going to get a fair shake.
And if people knew this, and this is the thing, like a lot of the stuff that I mean, luckily, Dad, you've retired, right? So it's like for you, it's like I can pretty much talk about this, right? But man, every time I've talked, I don't know how many people off the record about this, but you can't say that. No, not even like off the record, not even anonymously. Like, no, you cannot say that, and that's the fear that's built into the system.
If you become a whistleblower, you just wrote off your career.
Yeah, and they use that fear.
I'm basically in healthcare. It's such a small industry. Everybody knows everybody. At some point, I mean, it seems big, but it's very small. And if you're going to whistleblow, you better be basically saying, I have another industry to go to, because you will be blackballed. So that is a very powerful, force behind the fact I'm not going to be the one to start spilling the beans of what I see going on.
Oh, it's fear and greed, and that's where I think how rich it is. We have, I mean, literally, how many times we've seen senators, congressmen talking about, well, we need to cut the budget on this. We need to cut the budget. I mean, we're arguing right now. We had a government shut down for $5 billion, right? And the reality is, it's like they want to cut programs that are actually helping people, right? Because, well, we just can't afford it. But here's the messed up thing, though, is that the gall of these people to go, all right, you know what? We're allowing the healthcare companies and device manufacturers, pharmaceutical companies to completely, so they can make billions. We're letting them rack up the bill to the U.S. government, and then we have the gall to not only not talk about it, not actually ask the hard questions, but then we're actually going to cut, instead of cutting the money to them, well, we start cutting the money to people that actually need it. I mean, think about it. Last year, the Medicaid budget. This is Medicaid. This is not even Medicare. Medicaid alone was $553 billion. Even if you drop that number by 5%, that's your wall. Those are education programs. I get it, but I'm so angry and pissed off that our senators and congressmen have so bought and sold this system. The hospitals and everyone is using fear of what's going to happen if we don't do this. But the fact of the matter is, this is what is going on. It's greed, it's fear, it's corruption, and all in a business that's about saving people's lives. And we have nobody on the watch protecting us.
Well, and you haven't even hit the big part, is the fraud that goes on. That with double billings, illegal billing, hospitals that will encourage doctors, and I'm just saying the system that if a person comes in and has a heart cath, then they need to go to a stent, well, they'll discharge them and have them come back the next day and then readmit, so that they can get the billings, things of that goes on.
Oh, there was a doctor in Texas.
If anybody could, if they could clean up the fraud alone, the systems would be totally solvent.
Oh, and that's a crazy thing.
They just don't have enough people.
It's egregious.
And if you see the fraud, you're going to go out there.
Everybody's cashing in, so nobody wants anything changed. I get it. I understand. And it's you can't fight City Hall, so to speak. So, like you said, you can't be the whistleblower, otherwise you'll be blackballed. So anyone from within the system trying to call us, even though we all kind of know what's going on, it's not exactly a secret, so to speak. I mean, we might not know everything, but overall, the public in general kind of knows that we're getting screwed when it comes to the cost of health care and things like that. I mean,
it's the fear that the fear to me is what they get everyone hung up on. Well, it's fear and the black and white knowledge. It has to be all this or all that. Because the thing is, let me ask you a question, Bill. Do you know how England's system works?
I do not know
So,
how England's
so here's the
system
deal.
works.
All right, England, government mandated medicine. Do you know it really isn't
Here.
100% government mandated? So how it works in
Yeah.
England, all right, and the thing is, you talk with anyone that's over there, they'll back this up. I've had colleagues, Americans have gone over there, and all
Hmm.
agree the same thing. It's the best system. So your government covers your preventative health care, doctor's visits. I mean, your medications. If you have to go to the hospital, technically it's covered, right? And then the thing is, and if you want better care, you want to get in faster, you want more freedom, you go and
You
get a
pay for
private
it.
supplemental health care insurance plan. So if you're
Hmm.
wealthy and you want a better plan, great, awesome. But your basic needs are covered. It's the exact same way that our Medicare system has worked. This is what is covered. If you want something more, go for it. The thing is, no, I'm willing to bet $1 million that not more than 5% of the country understands that's how it is over there. They keep thinking 100% like in Canada or in France or in Germany. The British system works. The people like it. The costs are lower. You
Hmm.
still have private health insurance plans. You still have innovation. And you have cost controls on healthcare. You want a better Cadillac plan? Go for it. Pay for it. Sweet. Awesome. It's a perk. Nothing would change. It would just be
Now,
basic preventable healthcare.
what? And I don't know if you know this, but what kind of system does England have as far as their officials there when it comes to special interest groups and monetary donations and things like that? Do they have the same or similar issues that you are aware of that we do here in this country? Because I think that is, in my opinion, the true root of it is kind of what we touched on earlier. I mean, I just don't think the Americans are going to get
That's
a
a good
fair
question.
shake.
I know who we can ask, though. We'll have to ask
They all
Max
have.
Miller. Max
They
Miller
all
of
have
Voice of the
degrees
Radical
of it.
Center. He's from Britain. Yeah. But you're right. And so, like, I think if we're really talking, I think if we're really looking at what do we do here, how do we even begin? Because the whistleblowers, I mean, you can whistleblow it, but they're still going to use the fear. That's how powerful it is, right? I think number one, we need to start having a conversation where it's about what's the middle ground. It doesn't have to be extreme. The thing is, even a socialized plan, man, it might take 50 years to get there. How about we start talking about a process? How about we start talking about, okay, like, well, number one, it's unaffordable. Okay, great. What do we need to start doing to get costs down? Okay, what's a price point? Let's get a gang of people in there where what is a price point to where you guys are still making money, but we're responsibly can still innovate, but we're not charging an arm and a leg? Can we develop some type of commission, not government run healthcare? Can we develop a commission of doctors, health insurance people, experts that will help develop pricing strategies that understand what is appropriate, what goes into the cost of manufacturing, and have them make recommendations? I mean, just by bringing the cost down in that manner, we're going to save a ton of money. We're going to save billions of dollars a year, right? On healthcare. We're going to make things affordable. We still have innovation. Let's just start there. Let's have a conversation about that. And then we'll go on to the next piece. But the second we start jumping the gun to one direction or the other, it isn't going to work. So I think we should start there. And if we're really being honest, all right, if we're that worried about the innovation, well, you know what? Use the tax code to basically give them their money back. I've said this on previous shows. Like, we shouldn't just be giving people money. These companies, make them do something for it.
Right.
So guess what? They cut their cost 20% to the government mandated programs. Guess what? I'll give you a tax cut on your revenues that's equal basically to that. Hey, if you're offering this level of care and at this cost price point, we'll give you a tax cut to make it even. That to me makes the most sense in the world. Why would we not do that? Because everybody wins in that situation. Because the way I look at it, they would save, even in the loss of revenue of the tax cut, they'll be saving that money. They'll be saving billions of dollars a year on healthcare. Not only that, if people are going and getting healthcare, then the cost of them entering the system will be less because they'll be healthier. They'll be getting regular preventative healthcare. And so they'll be saving money that way. It's like, but it takes being a visionary. It takes people to understand these systems and what is going on with it and have a different discussion. And
Well,
I just,
that's the American system is not a preventive health care.
hell no, it isn't.
It is a reactive healthcare system.
Yeah. And then as you as you said in a previous episode, that the cost of people who have been out of the system to enter the system is astronomical, and it only gets worse.
Yeah.
Because by the time they come in, either they had a heart attack, they had a stroke, or they're so completely just unhealthy, they're going to be on a million medications and procedures. Guess what? They're going to raped over
all the money you might have saved over the years by not going to the doctor. Now you're making up for it.
But see, a lot of that I feel could be prevented if we would go, and your England systems and all that are totally focused on preventive medicine.
Yep.
Is getting to you why it's not as costly, tax asset or whatever. But the American system, they discourage you going to the doctor with all the high copay.
See, that's
not covering all these items, the deductible. So people don't go and access the system till they're really, really sick.
You know what I think they should do? I know it's going to sound
And then
crazy.
it's going to cost you 10 times the amount.
Yeah, that's exactly my point.
Yeah.
And the people that aren't covered, like you said, Medicare, Medicaid, that the taxpayers end up having to cover. And I get that. I mean, those are good programs for the people that need them. But I almost feel like you were talking about earlier about the folks that don't go. It's not preventative. They don't go until there's something really wrong with them. I almost think we need to go to a throwback, having young kids in school, have a throwback to where, you're required. Remember, before you go to school, you're required to have a doctor's note and a dentist note saying you went to the doctor and the dentist. We should have some kind of rule, and of course, I don't know if it would even work, but something to where to say, you know what? Once a year, you are required to go see the doctor for preventative care. But if you don't, then there's some kind of...
That's a great idea, but here's the problem, though. Fear. They're going to go, well, that's just the government trying to tell you what to do, and it's going to be that. Next thing you know, it'll be communism.
But hold on.
I agree.
I hear what you're saying, but the way they need to sell it as is saying, listen, here's X number of dollars we have to spend a year, that we spend as the taxpayers, the government, in health care. This is not because we want to control you. This is to keep the cost down. That's how they need to sell it. Because it's not just selling, it's the truth. Saying, okay, and I don't know what the numbers would be, but I would think based on what we've talked about, preventative costs versus the non-preventative costs, I would think they would save some money if they said, listen, once a year, you just got to go in for your annual checkup, give them some kind of incentive saying, not penalty, but incentive saying, if you go in, then you are going to get some kind of, I don't know, tax break, something. Right? You got to make it incentive based. You can't make it punishment based, in my opinion. That's and just say, listen, if you do this, you will get this incentive, and also it's going to save us as a country money in the long term, we think. And if it doesn't work, guess what? Go back to the old way.
It does make brilliant sense, but this is the problem where
government intrusion.
That's the thing. We have to look at, we're so just polarized and so much BS and fear about, you do this, it's going to be communism. You do this, they're going to take your guns. You do this, they're going to be anally raping you every single day.
Well,
I mean, it's like
literally. You don't force people to do it. That's why I said you got to give it through incentives.
And I like the tax system.
That's the key.
I love the idea of using the tax code, using the tax system to, it's all about money. Use the tax code, but once again, everything's still going to have to come back down to people having a discussion. I think we have to take power away. My whole thought about special interest in lobbying, their money only has power if it helps them get elected. If the people were to be smart enough to go, that is bullshit. There's no way. I know that is wrong. You are not making decisions that are best for me. I'm not going to vote for you. You could have $1 billion in your campaign fund. You are not getting elected. That is how we neutralize it, and that's why we need to get people to start understanding what is the real argument, and that's what tonight's episode is an introduction to. It's why I made this. It's going to be a 3-part series of tackling healthcare from different angles. We have to understand what is at play here and why the system is the way that it is and why it doesn't change. And I think we've made a good case, and then I think we've laid out some really damn good suggestions, but the only way it works if people are educated. People understand what is going on, and hopefully by listening to some of this tonight, they realize a little bit what is going on. And so I know I get fired up about this, but but this is a big deal. And it's frustrating being a healthcare clinician, seeing part of this. Not the second part. The third part, I'm actually going to call out my own industry. I'm going to call it the mental health industry with the opiate epidemic. Um, we have there's a lot of ways. Dad, you touched on a little bit of fraud in the system. Well, my industry, I will call out, we are very irresponsible for that. The treatment industries, the pharmaceutical companies, the psychiatrists. I mean, they're all complicit. And we have to understand, why is our drug problem so bad and why is there not enough help? Well, I'm going to call us out, but we need to be called out, because if we don't call it out and look in the mirror and people don't understand, we're not going to change. And you know what? Frankly, I probably am going to piss a lot of people off, but that's on me though. I'll protect sources when it comes down to the people that have been on our show in the medical industry. But you know what? I'll throw myself underneath the bus and calling out my own industry, and I'll piss a lot of people off. Frankly, I don't care, because people need to know. So that'll be part 3. What we're hoping to dive into in part 2, we're still waiting to hear on a couple guests that we're trying to have on the show, but we're hoping to have some insiders, people have actually worked in hospitals, like my father, who actually want them to offer up their solutions. Not a hatchet job, not to call people out, but from a medical, from an executive perspective, okay, what really needs to be done? I don't want to hear a congressman. I don't want to hear an HMO person. I want to hear people that are in the hospitals going, hey, listen, no, these are the solutions. This is what needs to change. This is what's realistic. And I'm talking steps. What should step 1 be? Not talking about the end result, which scares people. I'm talking, what is the first step? I learned that as a clinician of, even when we're talking about anxiety or depression or life changes, job changes, when you start talking about the end result first, people get so damn anxious and overwhelmed, they shut down. And I've always had to sit there and wheel it back going, all right, well, let's not worry about that. That's step 312. Like, let's worry about waking up tomorrow. Let's worry about making a phone call. Let's worry about sending an email. That's what we need to get back down to. And I think we need people that are experts, and Dad, you'll obviously be back on that one. But that's where I want to hear, because I think you have to be in the industry to hear those steps, and no ulterior motives, no political affiliation, just people that are in the know. And that should be what we hand to every single politician. Everybody we talk to going, read this. This is something you need to know. Basically shouting it from everyone until they do make that change. So that's what we're hoping to kind of do. So I think for a good first dive into it, I think we uncovered a lot. Dad, as always, thank you so much for, one, supporting the show and being part of it, and just, kind of coming on here. Just kind of sharing that knowledge with us. Anything else you want to add before we kind of head out, and we'll pick up back here in the next episode?
I think we've done it there. It's a very, very complicated business. It covers so many areas. It is a, how you want to put it? It is a monster that needs to be controlled, and the problem is, you control one part, how do you control the other part? And when you get that controlled, how do you do that? Plus, also, there are so many other variables that are involved, from both the human aspect, the economic aspect, the government aspect, and that's state, local, federal guidelines. There is so much that goes into that industry. It's all going to have to be addressed at some point.
And it's a big thing. And I think, once again, just reiterating what I just said, is just that it has to come in piecemeal, because, we don't want to lose people their jobs. A lot of times people are making the decisions that they are based on, that's just how it's being called. That's what we're doing. And I think we have to stop vilifying everybody, even though I probably use some vilifying language, but all right, I was pissed, right? But I mean, the truth is that we have to kind of sit there and go, okay, like, that's all right. This is what was being called, but okay, we got to change it. And it has to come in piecemeal, and we have to allow for industries and everyone to adjust, because their whole business models have been based on how the system is. And so maybe it is time to give them that time to go, okay, like, here's 5 years, make the benefit of the doubt. We'll pass some tax code laws to help account for it, but you are going to have to change. But we're going to give you some time. But that takes leadership, and that takes people actually doing, well, frankly, what's best for other people.
I think people got to get pissed off enough to where they demand real change.
But not pissed off enough I think this is what the Democrats are kind of doing, taking that anger to go, we're going to change this shit fucking now. I want an 80% tax rate.
An actual plan.
And it's like, no, like, I understand you're pissed. I understand using that anger. I mean, it's what Trump, I think, used. He used people's anger, very legitimate anger.
Well, not just anger, but it's emotion. Anger is a big part of it, but emotion is the overall factor.
But part of being responsible, though, is going, I want to take that emotion, but we still have to do it in a way that makes sense, that's rational, that's accounting for everything. Because you're right, you do change the system all of a sudden, you will have some kickback, and you will have some of those fear, with scenarios playing out. But
people fear change. I fear change.
If it's done right, though, it can be done. But it takes people to be the big kids in a room. So, Bill, any last words for tonight?
Well, I think pretty much kind of to wrap up what we had said earlier, I just think it's going to take America to kind of wake up, so to speak, and not even wake up, because, again, I think the majority of us know what's going on. I think we just have to kind of get to a point and say, you know what, I don't care about this Republican or this Democrat. Yeah, we just have to say, you know what are we going to do as the people, because here's the problems, and what are we going to do? We got to get some people in there that are going to actually try to solve these problems and not worry about...
Not take advantage going, we're going to solve it, but I'm really not going to.
Well, that's the whole problem. You're going to have to get some people in there that are not motivated by money, necessarily. Not that capitalism is bad. I am a capitalist, but, you got to have some morals.
It's being honest. And that's... Right. So it's a responsibility, It's a...
There's a reason why you call it politics and dirty politics for a reason.
But I think that's where, the whole idea of the show, it's Gray Matters. Because when you take it, just like why I love the therapy, the room analogy. That's why I kind of have the show being like just it's America's therapy. Is that when you take everything out of black and white, right, wrong, he said, she said, and more just be about, okay, what's our solution? What are we trying to do here? What is the most logical thing to do, regardless of what's fair, unfair, right, wrong, what happened, what should have happened? Mysteriously, we can compromise. Mysteriously, we have the ability to see things differently, and that's where I hope we can get to that, or at least one radio show at a time, right? So, all right, well, let's wrap up the first one here, right? It was a good one, right? We got a lot accomplished, This is why we do here everything we do here at Gray Matters. We try to have that discussion, bring everything back into the gray, and then pack everything up and go back into your life and maybe have something to talk about. So on that note, everybody, I am Michael Devine, America's Counselor. Bill Reed, co-host, Armchair QB, the Armchair Therapist.
ArmchairQB.org. You can come check it out. Check out some random musings.
Especially after listening to a show like this, you're pissed off. Yeah. You want to go somewhere where it's actually fun. Has some funny things on there, some great stuff on there. Hopefully we'll have some cool announcements to make here about maybe a potential podcast. Armchair Quarterbacks. I don't know. It can't always be serious, right?
Can't always be serious. This is the only time of the week I am serious.
I know.
This is very therapeutic for me. I won't lie.
I know. It is good, right? But Dad, Richard Devine, the professor.
All right.
Always a pleasure. And
Alrighty.
everybody.
Well, I'll catch you all later.
Absolutely.
All right.
Everybody, remember, next time someone asks you, hey, man, you a Democrat? You a Republican? Oh, fuck that noise. My ass is gray. All right, everybody. On behalf of the Reporters Network, which I can gladly say we're a part of now, everyone have a good evening. Peace.
All right.